Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I am very pleased today to rise in the House to speak in favour of Bill C-19, the Ending the Long Gun Registry Act. But I would first like to honour my colleagues, the member for Yorkton Melville and the member for Portage Liscar, for their tremendous work on eliminating the long gun registry, and the fruits of their late labour we will soon see shortly. Many of my colleagues on this side of the House have spoken eloquently about how the long gun registry has been wasteful and ineffective, with costs ballooning to over $2 billion. They've proven that the registry has not stopped a single crime nor saved a single life. They have told us how frontline police officers like Murray Grismer and Dwayne Rutledge have explained why the registry is useless and actually reduces officer safety. They have told us how the registry needlessly targets law-abiding hunters, farmers, ranchers, and sports shooters. They have told us how it diverts much-needed resources away from crime prevention and law enforcement. My colleagues have been spot on in their condemnation of the long gun registry. What I will do is show why, in principle, the registry is wrong and should have never come into existence. Sir William Blackstone wrote in his seminal text, Commentaries on the Laws of England, that, quote, every wanton and causeless restraint of the will of the subject, whether produced by a monarch, a nobility, or a popular assembly, is a degree of tyranny. This is an important statement to remember in the context of the long gun registry. Not long after his first election, Alan Rock, the former Liberal Justice Minister who oversaw the implementation of the long gun registry, stated that it was his firm belief, and that's a quote, that only police and the military should have access to firearms. Lloyd Axworthy, the then Liberal Foreign Affairs Minister during his time, also stated that, quote, disarming the Canadian public is part of the new humanitarian social agenda. These egregious attitudes run contrary to Section 1A of the Canadian Bill of Rights, where clearly laid out in black and white, it states, quote, it is hereby recognized and declared that in Canada there have existed and shall continue to exist without discrimination by reason of race, national origin, color, religion, or sex, the following human rights, namely A, the right of the individual to life, liberty, security of the person, and enjoyment of property. This is not something that most of my colleagues across the aisle would like to admit is part of the rights of Canadians. Law-abiding individuals should not be compelled by the force of criminal law to register their property. And let's not mince words, Madam Speaker. A firearm in the hands of a sound-minded, law-abiding Canadian is no more of a threat to the safety of Canadians than any kitchen appliance or garden tool. It is refreshing that our government has finally returned this common-sense attitude back to the discussion. Limiting personal freedom for nebulous public safety benefits is not what the Fathers of Confederation envisaged in 1867. We cannot fundamentally give up liberty in order to maintain a small amount of safety, or in reality, a small amount of perceived safety. And this is why I'm so very proud to be a Conservative member of Parliament. We are the only party that talks about liberty, freedom, and human rights, and we actually mean what we say. Rather than frittering away billions of dollars, this money could have been appropriately spent on crime prevention, policing, or incarceration, all of which would have, by comparison, reduced crime exponentially. The regulation of property is a matter for the provinces to deal with, and is most certainly not a matter to be dealt with under the criminal code, the strongest instrument available to government. We must cease the attitude that says guns are scary, therefore no one should have them. If we follow that path, this approach will simply never end. It is a sad truth, Madam Speaker, but there are individuals who will seek to do harm to others in our society. Studies show this number to be about 7% of the population. Those people will not be bothered by some sort of bureaucratic regulation that mandates them to register their firearms. This attitude needs to be replaced by one of enlightened understanding. Regulation must be smart, and that is what we have done. We ensure through rigorous testing that only those who are responsible and qualified come into possession of firearms. We have ensured that those who insist on breaking the law and harming others will see serious jail time. These are measures that make sense. These are measures we will continue, and these are measures that the opposition somehow opposes. I'm not sure how they logically square that circle. Canadians voted on May 2nd from coast to coast to coast for a party that said, we will return logic to the firearms laws in this country. Every single person knew that a Conservative government would end the long gun registry. That should be a surprise to no one. Promise made, promise kept. Fancy that. Canadians gave our government a strong mandate to end the wasteful and ineffective long gun registry once and for all. And that is exactly what the bill before us will do. I would now like to focus, Mr. Speaker, on the land, resources, people, and culture of my own constituency and describe why my constituents are uniformly outraged by the long gun registry. Dauphin Swan River Marquette is a vast and beautiful constituency in western Manitoba. Farmers, ranchers, loggers, hunters, anglers, outfitters, and trappers make up the majority of my constituents. It is a beautiful place with abundant wildlife, and many of my constituents are avid hunters, as am I. Hunting is a part of my culture and my way of life, as it is for many of my constituents. Interestingly, almost all of the homes in my constituency have one or more firearms, yet the crime rate is very low. And the member opposite's comments about how women are intimidated by firearms most certainly does not apply to the women in my constituency, many of whom own firearms and hunt. Why is the crime rate so low? It is because where I live, we have a culture of respect for each other, our community, and the land that sustains us. In fact, I would call my constituency a peaceable kingdom. Members opposite are always throwing around labels like gun lobby in order to demonize people like my constituents, as if to my neighbors, firearms ownership is a central tenet of their existence. To us, firearms are a useful tool and a necessary part of country living. We're not afraid of firearms, and seeing someone walking down the road with a firearm is usually an excuse to stop, visit, and ask how the hunting trip was. And in my constituency, the gun lobby is manifested by the many wild game dinners that are hosted right across my constituency. And again, in my own constituency, there's a tradition, the Crawford Park Christmas party, where people bring food to our event, and most of the meals are wild game. We have a Santa Claus, we have Christmas carols, we have all the traditional things that Canada stands for. So that is the gun lobby in action, isn't it? It is not. Those are good, solid folk who work hard and play by the rules. And as I said, my constituents are honest country people who work hard and play by the rules. That is why we find the long gun registry so egregious and so offensive. When crimes are committed in far-off big cities, who gets punished? We do. Parties opposite make a great show of their support for the working people, yet those parties are working tirelessly to put my communities out of business. From the long gun registry to the Liberals' failed animal rights legislation, to the NDP attacks on rural resource communities, and to the recent NDP member from St. John's South Mount Pearl's musings on the end of the seal hunt in his province, a disturbing pattern has emerged, a pattern of relentless attacks on the entire sustainable use community. The Liberals have always despised rural resource communities like my own, but there was a time when the old NDP actually exhibited some solidarity with people on the land. In fact, out of the 9 NDP MPs at the time of the vote on Bill C-19, 8 voted against the long gun registry, including the then leader, Audrey McLaughlin. Times have certainly changed, Mr. Speaker, and today's NDP have become the party of big government elites and union bosses have abandoned their roots. Well, members on this side of the House have not forgotten and will never forget who we are and where we come from. We stand in solidarity with Canada's natural resource communities, with our culture of the responsible and sustainable use of our natural resources, and with Canada's law-abiding firearms owners and hunters. I therefore encourage all members to stand with me and support Bill C-19, a bill to end the long gun registry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good speech. Question et commentaire. L'honorable député de Alfred Pelin.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et je remercie mon honorable collègue pour son discours. Je comprends très bien que le gouvernement de l'autre côté de la Chambre des conservateurs veut abolir le registre des armes à feu. C'est très clair, surtout après l'allocation de temps qu'on vient encore de voter pour une 14e fois dans cette Chambre. Ce que je me demande, c'est pourquoi ce gouvernement-là ne veut pas donner les données au Québec qui les demande depuis des semaines et des semaines. Puis pourquoi ils ont un tel manque de respect envers le Québec que ce même parti a reconnu comme une nation dans cette Chambre?
Member for Dauphin, Swan River, Marquette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for her question. There's a very simple answer to that very simple question. The reason the records are being destroyed and they will not be supplied to any jurisdiction is that when we committed to eliminate the long gun registry, that is a de facto commitment to eliminate the records. The records are the registry, and we simply could not say we're going to eliminate the registry without eliminating the records. That is self-evident.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I wish to address this question through you to my friend, the Honourable Member for Dauphin, Swan River, Marquette. And in this case, I use the term friend with great affection. I happen to have known the member for many years through his previous work before politics in biology. My question, though, is to ask him and other members of the Conservative Party not to assume that members on this side of the House don't, in fact, have friends and relatives who are hunters, who use guns, who respect gun owners, who understand that gun owners in this country are responsible members and stalwart members of our communities. The question I wish to ask my friend is please to recognize that some of us actually have spoken to police chiefs, spoken to RCMP officers who've asked us to help them keep this tool, and I would much have preferred that at this point in the discussion we were finding solutions that work for everyone rather than finding ways to further divide us.
Member for Dauphin, Swan River, Marquette.
And I thank my friend for her question. I'm reminded of the metaphor, if it sounds like a duck, walks like a duck, and swims like a duck, I'm afraid it must be a duck. And again, all her pious words notwithstanding in favor of the hunting community, the actions of all of the members opposite certainly belie that. Over and over and over again, they seek to restrict and reduce the ability of people who live in my constituency to live the lives how they want. I will gladly concede the point to my honourable friend when she provides unequivocal support for a way of life that has sustained this country for generations.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaire. The Honourable Member for Medicine Hat.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege for me to get up today and talk on the elimination of the long gun registry. My riding, Mr. Speaker, is very expansive. We have both rural and urban. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, I've talked to frontline police officers. I've talked to constituents right across our riding, whether it's rural or urban citizens. And every one of them, Mr. Speaker, there may be the odd one that I have talked to that wanted to keep it, but the vast majority, and if I would say 99% of those, would like to get rid of the long gun registry. And we know that this has been a very, very expensive piece of legislation. And so I would ask my honourable colleague, who is certainly supporting his elimination of the long gun registry, and I have to comment on his speech, I would ask him if he can tell us actually how much this has actually cost Canadian taxpayers, and in fact, Mr. Speaker, if in fact those dollars could have done better use for the citizens of Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dauphin, Swan River, Marquette.
Question, and we know that it's cost at least $2 billion overall, and I know members opposite dismissed the $5 million a year as if it's peanuts. Obviously, that money could have been better spent on policing and law enforcement activities. However, I would like to throw another idea into this. I am a biologist, avid conservationist. Most of the hunting community participates in conservation activities. When I think of the conservation programming that could have been funded with that money, I literally weep. The good we could do for our land, biodiversity, and wildlife with that money would simply be incalculable.
Good.